In lesson 9.5, we're going to talk about circles and circumference. So first, we're going to talk about all the parts of a circle. And what is a circle? A circle is a set of all points equidistant, which just means same distance, from a center point. And that center point is this dot in the middle. That's your center. Okay, now a radius is a segment from the center of a circle to the edge of the circle. And it's important to know that the radius is 1/2 times the diameter. And that's a times, not a subtraction. Times. Okay, so where do we see a radius? So from the center of the circle right out to the edge, that is your radius. And a chord is a segment connecting 2 points on the edge of a circle. Let's fix that word. Much better. But a chord doesn't have to go through the center. Okay, so a chord just takes any point on the edge of a circle and connects it to another point. It does not have to go straight through the middle. That is a chord. And a diameter is a chord that does go through the center. It's also good to know that the diameter is equal to 2 times the radius. So where do I have a chord? One end of the circle. There it is. To the other end of the circle, but it must go through the center. That is your diameter. And finally, your circumference is the length around the outside edge of a circle. It's like perimeter, but we don't have any sides to add up, so it gets a different name. And circumference is pi times diameter, or 2 times pi times the radius, since the diameter is just 2 times the radius anyway. So pause the video and fill that in before moving on to the examples. Now in the first example, they want us to take a look at this circle and name all of these parts. So list the radii, which is just plural for radius. Just means we're going to have more than one. So list all the radii that you see in circle R. Now we call it circle R because R is the center point. So remember, radius goes from a center to the edge. So RB would be 1. Another one I see is RE. And the last one is RD. Notice that all have the letter R. If you're naming a radius, you have to include, you have to include the center point when you name it. So it's helpful to know that it's a radius. What about the chords? Okay, well, chords just connect two endpoints on a circle, but does not have to go through the middle. So C and D is a chord. A and B is a chord. But while we said it doesn't have to go through the middle, it doesn't mean that it can't. So BD is also a chord, even though it has another name, which you're going to need for the quick check in number 1. So go ahead and pause the video and try that first quick check before moving on to the next part. Okay, now we're going to take a look at a word problem here. Finding the radius and the diameter. Make that go away. In July 22nd, 2002, the world's largest wooden nickel was unveiled in San Antonio, Texas. The radius of the wooden nickel is 80 inches. So I'm going to mark that. Radius, 80 inches. I like to write down the important information. What is its diameter? Okay, well, I know that the diameter is twice the radius, which means 2 times the radius. And if I know that the radius is 80 inches, I can just do 2 times 80. And 2 times 80 is 160, so the diameter is 160 inches. Okay, now what if I had to go on and find circumference? The surface of one type of trampoline is bounded by a circular frame with a 7-foot radius. Find the circumference of the frame. So again, I know that my radius is 7 feet, and they want me to find their circumference. Well, we have 2 formulas for circumference. C equals pi times diameter, and, go away. And we could also use C equals 2 pi r. So in this example, they chose to use pi times diameter. We are going to use 3.14 for pi, and we're going to do diameter. Remember, diameter is 2 times the radius. So if my radius is 7, 2 times 7 is 14. So I'm going to do 3.14 times 14. And if I multiply those two together, I get 43.96. And it says to the nearest foot, so 43.96 rounds up to 44 feet, which is choice B. Now what we're going to do is, instead of this, I want you to get into the habit of leaving your answers in what we call pi form. So for example, I would have left this answer, I would have just said it's pi times 14, but it looks better to write, 14 pi, and don't forget your units, feet. Okay, so that's how I would leave my answer. No need to multiply the 3.14. But this was a multiple choice question, and they said to the nearest foot, so I had to. So now you're going to try the quick checks. Number 2, you're just finding the radius given the diameter. And number 3, you're finding the circumference of the circle in meters. And I'm going to say leave your answer in pi form. Okay, don't forget your units. Try the quick checks and we'll check your work in class.